We have a saying that if you look a polar bear in the eye, it'll change your life, it'll change your heart.
Polar bears are the most incredible animal. They are a bear that lives on the ocean. They completely rely on this crazy habitat that's dark and cold and wet and windy. They're moving more than any other animal. They're fasting longer than any other animal. They are the most specialized special species, and they're really worth protecting.
The Arctic to me is just an amazing place. It's unlike anywhere else on our planet, and it's hard to believe something like a polar bear could live out there, and then you see them cruising along at ease. They're just such an unbelievably cool animal to get to work with. I'm very fortunate.
We protect what we know and what we understand. The Arctic plays a huge part in our global climate systems. By conserving the sea ice and by protecting polar bears, ultimately we're protecting all living things on Earth, including ourselves.
Polar Bears International is unique in that we're the only nonprofit dedicated exclusively to polar bears and the Arctic sea ice they depend on.
From the conservation to the research to the education to the outreach. And all of it is oriented towards the goal of better understanding and protecting the species.
The biggest threat to polar bears worldwide is global warming. Their habitat, the sea ice where they catch their food, is disappearing, literally melting as global temperatures rise.
Arctic sea ice is such an important ecosystem. It's not only affecting the Arctic, but it actually acts like Earth's air conditioner. So by protecting that Arctic sea ice, it's good for polar bears, but it's also good for people.
The good thing about polar bear conservation is that it really takes everyone. And the fact that we not only do research, but we also fund research. We've been able to do some really unique work. We've tested all types of radar equipment and how they might be used for early detection systems, using technology to not only further science and research, but also how we live and coexist with polar bears.
Churchill has really been such a testing ground for human polar bear coexistence. They've taught us so many lessons about how to live with polar bears, what works and what doesn't work. It could be through educational safety materials, it could be through providing equipment, providing training, helping communities meet each other and provide opportunities for people to share knowledge. And we can take a lot of what we've learned and apply that across the north to help other communities who will be dealing with more polar bears in the coming years.
The Arctic is an extremely challenging place to work. It's remote, which makes it super expensive to do some of the science and monitoring we need to do to understand polar bears. But at PVI, we love that challenge. We've had a long-standing project monitoring polar bear dens, first in Alaska, now in Svalbard, Norway, where we use remote den camera systems to figure out what polar bears are doing when they come out of their dens, to note the timing, potential changes in timing, and also to look at the condition of the cubs.
And that kind of information is ultimately going to be important when we're trying to understand how humans that might be occupying or exploring habitats near denning areas might influence those bears. If we understand their behavior to begin with, we can then monitor how it might change and ultimately develop ways to manage it.
We continue to inform the best policy possible, factoring in the latest climate science as well as conservation expertise to protect polar bears.
Because most people will never get an opportunity to come to the Arctic or see polar bears in person, it's a real passion for us to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to share that experience.
We like to refer to Buggy One as a mobile broadcasting studio. We stream live to classrooms all around the world. They also have the ability to interact directly with the polar bear scientists.
People need to know about a species in order to act on behalf of that species and protect their habitats. The Tender Connections program allows us to connect people to polar bears in the Arctic. And the goal of outreach like this is to instill hope and inspire action in our viewers.
The absolute best thing is being able to show students their first polar bear. We're reaching more people than ever before, providing them better tools and ways to empower action in their own communities. Polar Bears International House has been an incredible space to be able to talk to people from around the world about polar bears, about what it's like to live with polar bears, and put the polar bears here in Churchill, Manitoba in context with what's going on across the rest of the Arctic.
Our activities in Svalbard have been growing in recent years. We have now opened an interpretive center during the tourism season, and in just 40 days, we can talk to 4,000 people. It's a great opportunity for us to spread the message with people who really care about polar bears. And when people start to connect those dots, we see them taking action on behalf of the environment.
With the help of our field ambassadors, it's a great opportunity to reach out and share the message, which is solely dedicated to polar bears and sea ice.
The polar bears roaming around out here on the sea ice don't know that their world is disappearing, but we do. And every one of us can play a role to assure that polar bears survive so they can be appreciated as part of this Arctic environment into the future and always.
I feel fortunate every day because I'm really working with some of the most talented people on the planet, researchers and educators and passionate people in communication. Definitely collaboration is at the core of our values.
We really believe that like-minded organizations that share our values and have influence in their own communities, that kind of combined effort is how we get the exponential impact that we need to have.
There's still time for hope. All too often we hear a lot of overwhelming news, particularly about the Arctic and polar bears, but we know if we take actions now, we'll see sea ice respond in kind for polar bears, and we'll also see changes that will make life better for all of us.
We hope you're inspired by the bears and the Arctic ecosystem they call home. By investing in polar bears' future, we're investing in humanity's future and leaving a legacy for generations to come.